Hey everyone, it's Blaine Wiggins with HomeSmart. If you've followed me for any particular amount of time, you probably know I do real estate in the valley, but I also do real estate on the mountain. Payson, Strawberry, Pine, Happy Jack, Show Low, Pine Top, Lakeside, Forest Lakes, everything in between. I love the mountains and I love helping people buy cabins. About 10 or 11 years ago, my wife and I bought our first cabin. After a year or so, we realized that it was empty way more than it was not. So we decided to try this vacation rental thing. And back then, Airbnb wasn't as big as it is today. It was definitely a thing, but not quite as mainstream as it is today. So we learned a ton on our own through trial and error. But we went into it with the idea, like, what if we could just cover like 25% of our mortgage? That was what we thought. And we learned very quickly that not only did we cover 25%, but we covered 100% and we made a nice profit. And so over the years, we've added multiple cabins to our portfolio. And as a realtor, I've helped, my goodness, probably 100 or more people buy cabins and start successful Airbnb or vacation rental businesses. So I have a passion for it and I love helping people do it because I think it's a no-brainer of an investment. So years ago, I made this spreadsheet. It's super cool and nerdy, and there's nothing fancy about it whatsoever, but it's a way to forecast what your expected revenue could be based off of a few factors. And I'll explain what those factors are here in just a little bit. When I am thinking about buying a property, the first thing I want to know is, okay, what's my mortgage going to be for the entire year? And then I'll come in here and I'll use this spreadsheet to kind of work backwards to see if I can cover that expense. So I want to show you an example, if I can find it here. This is a property that I have listed right now. And if you're looking for a property to dip your toe into the Airbnb or vacation rental ownership water, I don't know that I can find a better property for you. This one is located at 2708 High Pine Loop. It's like 2 hours from the valley in a little town called Overgard in a community called Bison Ranch. And Bison Ranch is really cool because it has so many fun amenities for people, which is great when you're trying to rent out your cabin. So it has a catch and release fishing pond, which people love, pickleball, tennis court, a rec center. It has volleyball courts. It's right across the street from the National Forest. So if you want to go riding on your side-by-side or go for a jog or go mountain biking, it's close to lakes. I mean, there's just so many great amenities. So this is a great one I wanted to show as an example of, okay, I'm thinking about buying a cabin. I'd like to do a vacation rental. So I wanted to take you through my thought process when I do something like this. And I'm going to use this property to show you how I do that. So it's listed at $324,900. Okay, so I'm going to go, this is what's called a PITI calculator. PITI stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. It's a composite of your mortgage payment. I want to identify, like, what's this mortgage payment going to be approximately? 30-year fixed, 6% interest rate. If I put 20% down, that leaves me with a loan amount of $260. Taxes for this property were $1,125 for this year. And then your insurance will be up or down depending on, your insurance provider. Hit calculate now so you can see that your PITI monthly payment would be a little over $1,550 every single month. If you multiply that times 12, that means your mortgage will be roughly $18,700 for the year. Okay, so now that I have that in my mind, I want to go back to my spreadsheet and say, okay, well, what do I need to rent this cabin out for, and what percent of vacancy do I need in order to get to $18,700? There's a couple different sections of this little spreadsheet. The first is I've taken every single day in the calendar and I've assigned it to one of 6 categories. Off-peak weeknights, off-peak weekend nights, so weekends are Fridays and Saturdays. Weeknights are Sundays through Thursdays. On-peak weeknight, on-peak weekend nights. So on-peak are basically from like Memorial Day to about the second week of August. That is a peak season. When you get into fall and some of the winter months, that too is peak because you're only an hour from Sunrise Ski Resort. People love to go up and see the fall colors, so there's lots to draw. So on-peak, off-peak. Then you have major holidays and minor holidays. So for your reference, major holidays, I call them the big 5. So you have New Year's, 4th of July, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. So those are the big 5. And then minor holidays would be things like Martin Luther King Day, Columbus Day, President's Day. Basically holidays where your kids are off on a Friday or a Monday. So there's like a 3-day weekend. So those are minor holidays. So now down here we have percent of vacancy. And so I'm going to show you how by changing things up in the yellow sections, it will generate an expected revenue over here. We're going to start with rates. Okay, so off-peak weeknights. I'm going to go real conservative, say $75 a night. I think you'd probably get more than that, but again, try to be conservative. Weekend nights, $100 a night for the weekends off-peak. I think my seller said that pretty much every weekend at this cabin books. So you probably could get more than 100, but again, trying to be conservative. Now we're getting into on-peak weeknights. So during the summer, these hot months, say it's 125, kids are out of school, families are traveling. And then on-peak weekend nights, let's say 150. Those are a real premium. And then major holidays, let's say 250, and minor holidays, we'll say 200. Oops, 200. So these are the rates that we'll start with. Now, as you look right here, it'll take these dollar amounts and apply them to these dates and say what your expected potential revenue could be per month. Now, this is what it would be if you rented out every single day, which obviously you will not. So now we'll come down here and we'll play around with the vacancy percentage. So again, being conservative, I'm just going to say like 15% of the available 100% of dates are going to rent out because off-peak is the weakest of all the dates I have available. So I'm just going to say only 15%. For off-peak weekend nights, again, my seller says that almost every single weekend, on-peak and off-peak, rent out. But I, again, will be conservative. So I'm going to say 40%. On-peak weeknights, those should be, you should be really, really strong. So I'm going to say 70%. I think it's probably more than that. And then on-peak, so basically on-peak weekend nights, major holidays and minor holidays, all three of these should be 100%. But if you plan to use your cabin during some of those times, maybe you factor in a little bit that you're going to see some of it, you're going to use it for some of the time. So let's say 80%. Now, as you can see, using these rates and these vacancy percentages, it generates a total expected revenue over here of $26,335. You might remember that the mortgage was about $18,000, I think it was $18,600. So right there, it's about an $8,000 profit. Now, you're going to have other expenses like HOA, maybe if you have a security system or if you have internet or different amenities that you provide. The point is, you can see very quickly that you can cover your mortgage. So now let's get even more conservative. We'll bump that to 90, we'll bump that to 110, we'll bump that to 125, we'll drop this to 200, and we'll drop this to 175. Those are super conservative numbers, and even now we're still 4 or 5 grand over our mortgage. So let's come down here and make this even more conservative. Let's see what happens if I do, I mean, this is super conservative anyway, but we'll do 70%, 70%. So even now we're still making more than our mortgage payment. And so if you were aggressive, if you could get a premium, if you added amenities that would draw people there, you can see that very quickly, not only can you cover your expenses, but you can make a nice profit in the process. And so when you see it this way, it starts to help you understand like, oh yeah, I can do this. The neat thing about my wife and I, for our last few cabins that we've purchased, other than our down payment, we've never used any of our own money to pay for these cabins because both our last two that we bought fully furnished like this one. And in doing so, it was ready to go on day one. And so we had, I mean, I think one of the properties had 9 bookings when we bought it, and one of the properties had 7 bookings. And so we walked in with a significant amount of revenue already there waiting for us because the previous owners had booked those guests. So we've never had to use any of our own funds. As we've done upgrades to cabins, as we've done different things, we've been able to use the proceeds from our rental revenue to make those adjustments and to make those upgrades. My wife and I have a goal of having 6 to 9 months worth of rental expenses in the cabin account for that specific cabin. And the nice thing about that is if we ever want to use the cabin, we never feel like we're losing money because we've got a nice nest egg specifically for that cabin. And if for some reason nobody rented the cabin for 6 to 9 months, we'd be fine. We'd be covered. We've set that aside. So these are all types of things that I talk to my clients about when they're thinking about purchasing a property. I think this one's a fantastic deal. If you have been thinking about buying a cabin and have been wondering about how the Airbnb process works, feel free to reach out anytime. You can email me at listwithblaine@gmail.com. You can call or text me anytime, 623-256-1222. You can find me and you can see my listings by going to listwithblaine.com, or you can search for cabins on your own by going to my website, azcabinsearch.com. But again, I think this one right here in Bison Ranch, for the price, considering it has a following, considering you're buying a business, I think it's a fantastic deal. So give me a call if you have questions. Reach out anytime. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you found it informative. And if you ever want this spreadsheet, reach out and let me know. I'll send it to you. Happy to share it. I've shared it with lots and lots of people over the years. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.